Hey everyone, today I want to go ahead and talk about one of the features that I think could easily be introduced into Monster Hunter Rise's Sunbreak expansion that's set to drop this summer onto both the Nintendo Switch and on PC, that could be bringing not just old players a whole heck of a lot of nostalgia for those who still miss some of that old school feeling of Monster Hunter, while still introducing brand new players to something that feels interesting, rare, and perhaps just a little bit quirky. And that's the fact that treasure hunting is a feature that a lot of people seem to have kind of forgotten about from the early days of Monster Hunter. This was pretty much introduced in Freedom, Freedom 2, and in Unite. So pretty much a PSP centric feature that we haven't necessarily seen appear ever since. And kind of like in my video where I went over why we should probably be considering water combat to making a return, maybe for Sunbreak or maybe even for Monster Hunter 6, in this video I want to give what I think made treasure hunting interesting and appealing, and also why I think a new audience would begin to embrace it, especially with just how weird and quirky it actually was. But I guess more importantly, why I think in Rise it makes the most amount of sense for finally returning. Now, treasure hunting was a feature that was only ever available in Freedom, Freedom 2, and Unite, like I mentioned before. And essentially what you were doing here is going back out into the field, kind of like how you would consider now exploration quest, but instead you were timed, so you had a limited amount of time to be able to go out there. You were not able to bring in all the items in your item box, essentially, or in your pocket or whatever it might be, all the items that you typically bring with, potions, or back in the day when you had pickaxes, bug nets, and stuff like that, which you no longer need to do. Perhaps this is one of the reasons why they wouldn't necessarily want to bring it back, because those type of items are no longer available in the game. But more importantly, you were pretty much not bringing anything into the hunt. All you had is with your gear with you, you would speak to Treshy. Treshy was this white variant who pretty much had this like entirely weird story that it was all about just providing you with points and the best rewards if you brought him back some of the most rarer items that you simply had no access to get in the game. What made him completely interesting is that when you were out in these treasure hunts, you'll find a whole bunch of items with weird names or weird descriptions that simply were not available anywhere else in the game. They were only specifically available to these specific type of quest. So you would speak to Treshy, he will tell you pick whatever area you want to go ahead and explore, find the rarest and most valuable items, bring them back to me, and then we'll give you some of the best rewards. So you would go ahead and load into the hunt to the one of those divided old maps that we had back in the PSP and 3DS era, and then you would actually go into the inbox, pick up whatever items you thought you needed, but most likely you would be wanting to play with this with another person, so you would actually decide which person gets to take what items and what area they're going to explore of the map and set off. You would actually head one way and the other person would head in another, and you would try to find some of the rarer items there. You also had the option to be able to hunt monsters as you typically would, and there were even sectioned off areas in some of the maps that you needed to use like exploding bomb barrels to be able to get access to. Now these areas, interestingly enough, either had like eggs that you would actually typically carry all the way back to the starting point of the quest. Remember that you had that treasure box you wanted to go ahead and drop eggs into, which a lot of players I know for a fact did not like, which was probably one of the reasons why they started to remove those type of event quests. But also you had the chance to be able to find like pickaxes and bug nets after you already broke the one that you use, after you were continually gathering items from a very specific spot. Sometimes they would disappear, sometimes they wouldn't, but it was all about just collecting as many items as possible so you could come back into town, provide them to Treshy, and then you would get Poke Points. Poke Points will end up being used for you to be able to go ahead and pick up Poke Tickets. These were used for armor, and then you would actually use these in the Poke Farm as well, to be able to get like yielding rarer materials, more items, essentially just making your like farm a little bit more valuable. Now here, remember that we are no longer dealing with a farm. You actually have your Palicos and Palamutes, that would be in Monster Hunter Rise of course, and presumably in Sunbreak is going to be not all that different. You're sending them out on hunts, and on top of that you also have Kogarashi, the feline chief, to be able to send out your Palicos and your Palamutes into distant lands to pick you items. So there are a lot of mechanics that have kind of replaced what the treasure hunting was, but the core experience of being able to just head out into a hunt, not necessarily know what's going to be out on the field, and then pick up all these rare items that simply weren't available there, with limited items in your inboxes to, you know, different potions, limited amount of stakes, perhaps if you had cold and hot potions and stuff like that. Stuff like, at the end of the day, that make the hunt a little bit more interesting, and then use those as best as possible to your best of your abilities. Gather some of those really rare items, really rare pickups in those treasure hunts that were only available in like a very specific scenario or for a very short amount of time, and then bring those back to be able to get either Poke Point rewards or like guild card rewards, which are something that I know a lot of people, even now, when you get like guild card titles as like an event quest reward, people are not necessarily too happy about. I think there would be much better rewards now if they introduce these type of mechanics now. I think that it would be a whole heck of a lot easier to convince the people to put up with it, or I guess go through it, if they told you that there's a layer armor, kind of like the guild armor that you have whenever you're doing like arena event quests and stuff like that. The more you incentivize people with stuff like that, I think the better it gets. So modernizing some of these things could go a long way. Now, the Lost Swords is already something kind of like that already. That is Monster on the Rise. So in that way, there is a little bit of like, go to a certain spot, pick up an item. It'll give you some sort of lore. There's no real rewards for getting that, but there is, you know, that incentive of like collecting all the Lost Swords. And in Monster Hunter World Iceborne, there was the Bug Trapper treasures. I believe there were 60 of them in total. And what you would do is essentially just go to a very specific spot on the map. You would dig up and try to find whatever was under there, and there were like treasure hunting collections to be the ultimate collector trophy. I believe that was like an achievement as well in Iceborne that you definitely wanted to do if you wanted to collect all the, like, you know, platinum the game or whatever it was. So there have been hints of this feature making some sort of return in different iterations of more modern games, but we haven't necessarily had that same experience of like, speak to a Wyverian, you know, make your way down to the field, pick up just a limited amount of items for whatever it is that they're offering, and then make your best use, you know, in a situation, whether you're going to choose to hunt a monster, just explore the area, pick up whatever it is that you find, and then come back and try to cash in as best as possible. Now in Rise, there's multiple ways to get camera points and camera tickets, but you know, that's something that they could definitely try to introduce. I'm sure that Elgato is going to be one of those places that is also going to have its own currency. So if they chose to bring back treasure hunting into Sunbreak, I know this is something that would be an easy way to be able to convince people to just go out, hunt, and explore, be able to just go about their very own exploration and gather some new and interesting experiences that I think, even that we saw in the Rampage, the game is willing to go an extra mile to provide you with just a different, quirky, weird thing that you are not necessarily used to seeing. While people may not be fans of the Rampage, is most certainly different, and treasure hunting, certainly for all fans, I think would be a feature that comes back and give you just a kick of nostalgia. But that's about all the information that I have for you guys today. Something that I've been thinking about that I wanted to share, and hopefully some of you agree. If you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up. And as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.